Thanks, Joe. Thanks for recording that. Welcome everybody to our huddle. Glad you could join us today. I feel like we're probably going to have a little smaller groups. Well, hey, who is that? Is that Elizabeth? Oh, hey. All right. Hey, Liz, how are you? It's good to see her there with you, Kev. One of my favorite people.
Now you're muted.
Hey, I'm good. Just putting an offer in the house, so all good.
Nice. That's great. That's great. Well, it's good to come together, everybody, at least over Zoom. I wish we could beat in person, but glad we could talk a little bit. We are our topic today is resolving concerns in the REPC that come up, or kind of saving more of the coaching stuff for the kickoff meetings that are happening. I'm going to beg and plead everyone to please make sure you've RSVP'd. It's that time. It's coming very close where we have to get our numbers right, make sure we feed everybody. The first one is January 24th in Salt Lake. The next one is January 30th in St. George. And that is on a Tuesday. That is conflicting with some sales meetings that day, but that was the only day we could get the venue. So I do apologize for any inconvenience that may have, but we'll hold it on Tuesday, the 30th. And then that same week, February 1st, it will be in Park City. And that will conclude our kickoff meetings. I'm going to keep harping on this, but I'm working on the content right now. That's why Cheryl was at my door. We have I'm going through draft after draft after draft of a buyer's guide, but check this out. I mean, look at this content. There is 20, what are we up to now? We're 35 pages of how to deliver value to a buyer. I'm really excited about this. It's turning out to be very, very good. That will be unveiled at the seminars, the kickoff meetings. On top of that, we are going to talk about getting inspired and focus on what we want to accomplish. A lot of you've already set your objectives and all that, and it's fantastic. You should. Of course, planning doesn't take place only in these planning meetings. So, but hey, I'd love to see everyone there. So help me get everyone there. I appreciate that. It's going to be a great feast of content and a great feast, literally, of food, because Angie is overseeing it. I think we're going to have bandits, right? So salmon. Yep.
I was trying to unmute myself. Salmon, tri-tip. It'll be amazing. Good for the soul.
All right. I think we're also giving away at each one of the locations. I think we're giving away $500. So that'll be kind of fun to give away. I think we're going to do 5 drawings of $100 each. So that'll add a little level of excitement too. So, but if you've attended these in the past, it's our biggest in-person event we have in the company. So it's a huge, I think just make it a huge priority and bring your friends with you and your teammates with you that day if you can make it. And for those who have to travel, I understand. I appreciate it. I'll do what I can to see if you can win the drawings. How about that? Just shh, don't tell any. Just keep it between ourselves, Sandy. Sandy, I'm talking about you from Logan. Rachel from Moab. You make the trip. You might just find your card being pulled out of the drawing. Okay. Hey, love you guys. Glad we're together. Mike, let's kick off this topic. Do you have the form to look at?
Sure do. I sure do. All right, let's do this. All right, you should see it now. As many of you know, the reason we're talking about this today is simply because the issue came up in the office, and it's a good time to talk about it. So this is the resolution of due diligence addendum. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat. And if you want to speak up, feel free to do that as well. I think this is a good time to review this. This document hasn't been around all that long. And let's see, when did it come out? 17? Has it really been out since 17?
Time flies, Mike.
Anyway, this document, like I said, has been out for a minute. And anyway, you know, I think there's really good opportunities when this is appropriate, and then there's other opportunities where this may just add some confusion. And our goal is to create really clear communication between two people, and sometimes this helps, and sometimes it doesn't. So let's jump right in, and we'll read it, and we'll stop at each paragraph, and Will and I and anybody else who so chooses can help us make sense of this. So you know, the usual buy in between, offer reference date, all those stuff. So we'll start at paragraph 1. Seller and buyer agree as follows. So closing costs. This is one of 3 options here. So paragraph 1, closing costs, if we choose this box. Seller and buyer agree. The buyer accepts the property as provided in section 10.2 and 10.3 of the REPC. Seller shall contribute its settlement the amount of X to be applied at buyer's discretion toward any or all of the following: A, a permanent reduction or temporary reduction in the mortgage interest rate; B, mortgage financing costs; C, closing costs; and D, prepaid escrows. Any unused portion of the seller's contribution may, at buyer's option, be used to reduce the purchase price. If in a prior addendum, the REPC, seller has agreed to pay an amount towards buyer's closing cost, quote, in quotations, the prior contribution, the amount shown in section 1 above shall be in addition to the prior contribution.
That was a good ad of the forms committee. I remember when that came out, because a lot of times buyers are writing the offer initially, including closing costs right from the start. So after their inspection, you know, they're looking at this going, well, we already have that. So now what? And I think a lot of agents have asked this. I get this question. You maybe get it a lot, Mike, that, hey, if we already agreed to $7,000 in closing costs, and now we're going to check closing cost resolution, and I put, say, $2,500 in there, have I just inadvertently changed 7,500 to 2,500? Or do I now have, you know, 10,000 total? What do I have?
Well,
so that was an add by the forms committee to add that.
Yeah. So and to repeat for effect, this is any amount in there is added on top of any other amounts that you have already included in your purchase contract. All right, moving on. Paragraph 2.
Before you move off of this one, obviously, when you're a cash purchase, the option number 1 is that there's really not any closing costs other than a few $100 that could be allocated to anything. And so that's, I mean, that does remove one of our options, right? If you're a cash buyer. So we've got 3 options. If you're cash, you've got 2. So, and probably 1 that we prefer, right? So, okay, Mike, continue on.
Yeah. Your second option here is purchase price reduction. Seller and buyer agree that buyer accepts the property as provided in section 10.2 and 10.3 of the REPC, and that the purchase price shall be reduced, and the new purchase price is X. Now, Will,
yeah,
why would our agents use this entire addendum to check box 2 when they can just do addendum number 1, purchase price shall be X?
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. I mean, you certainly could, but so you go to the top of the form, you know, we've got this idea that we've gone through, not an idea, but this is a phase of the contract. We're resolving the concerns after the discovery and the information has been evaluated, personal inspections, professional inspections, and any other reports or information that the seller has given the buyer or the buyer has found on their own. So after the culmination of all of that information, we resolve it down to a purchase price adjustment, you know, to move forward. So that's the reason to use it. But it, you know, frankly, not, I mean, we could just adjust the sales price. I mean, we could do that. It's not necessarily, you know, wrong to do that. It's just better to resolve it in this form. We're sending the message that, yeah, we did evaluate, we did our due diligence, and to resolve all of that, we're here. If I'm a listing agent, I want the resolution, right? If I'm a listing agent, I want the resolution to everything you know about the property. The buyer agent, you know, like I guess I could make an argument that's material there too, but the better way is to use resolution. So it doesn't make it necessarily wrong to have an addendum with a purchase price change, but it's better to use resolution.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that we haven't gotten to yet is item number 4 on this addendum.
Yeah.
So by default, if you're filling this out, if you do not check a box, then your due diligence is resolved and is waived. So that's item number 4 here. I kind of asked that question so we'd get a better perspective of this document. But on item number 4, due diligence condition, upon acceptance of this addendum, buyer objections to the due diligence shall be deemed resolved, and the due diligence condition is waived by buyer unless checked below. So, you know, this is a little bit of a carrot for you as a buyer's agent to say, hey, we're reducing the purchase price and simultaneously releasing the due diligence condition. Obviously, you have the option to check that box there. You know, due diligence condition is not waived in certain circumstances. But just know that if you fill this out and you don't check a box, you're automatically, this is an automatic default to waiving due diligence when you use this, because it's in the title.
I'm sure all the brokers are thinking this right now, but my mind goes to 8.1C of the REPC that we already have agreed to. That says if the buyer fails to cancel the REPC or fails to resolve in writing with seller any objections that buyer had arising from buyer's due diligence, as provided, you know, buyer shall be deemed to have waived due diligence condition. So we're saying we've already agreed to that, and then the resolution, upon acceptance of addendum, buyer has deemed to resolve the due diligence, and it has now waived. And see, unless it says check below, listing agents, if I know we're jumping ahead here, but 4A is checked, that's a huge red flag because we've not resolved it. That means they want to hang on to their right to cancel. And that's a red flag because we're not really resolving it. I remember the forms committee arguing this entire point. Like, why are we even calling that? Why are we putting this language in here if we're trying to resolve something? And now we're saying it's not resolved. You know, it's number 4 is you got to know your craft, right? You got to understand that if that's marked, you didn't resolve it yet. You may be almost resolved, but you know, you're not fully resolved. And I wanted to make sure that we're mentally connecting the two paragraphs. 8.1C, failure to cancel or resolve objections. If you fail to do that, you waive your right to cancel. And I think we kind of know, we know that, right, guys? That's why we treat the deadline so, as critical, because once that 5 p.m. comes and goes, we lose our right because we've waived it, and because we already agreed to that language, and we don't need the resolution language to do that. It's already agreed to in the REPC. Yeah, Steve, you had a comment or a question?
Just if you have some extenuating circumstances, I'm assuming that's why that's in there, is because if you have some direct issues on repairs or whatever, you can resolve that with this form. But if you're still waiting for, say, radon or something like that, that's why you would not want to waive this.
Yeah, you
correct?
want to you want to extend deadline there, right? That'd be the better play, is just to extend the deadline to object or resolve.
Okay.
And not, you know, I mean, what are we, Mike, are we skipping ahead to 4A? Should we save that for a little bit and linear?
Yeah, I think the reason why I sort of begged the question, because in my opinion, paragraph 4 should be paragraph 1. I know that doesn't mean anything, but it sets up this whole document. But yeah, let's
yeah, it's a good point, Mike. It's a really good point. And I remember this whole debate. I mean, I was in the room. I was at the time. Yeah, believe it or not, Rob, there was a time where I was on the forms committee.
Hey, Bill, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Sometimes, Mike, explaining this to a buyer always makes them nervous when you go over paragraph 4. You know, by not checking this, you're waiving your right. Does anyone have a good way to explain to them that's not a bad thing, waiving your right? If you're comfortable that they accept this and they agree to your terms, then it's okay if you waive your right to the due diligence. Does
Well,
that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest explanation would be that you've already, if they're going, well, I don't want to do this, it's the immediate response to me is, well, you've already agreed to a certain period of time at which you will waive this. And all we're doing is accelerating that time. Like you've already agreed to this. As Will has pointed out in where you're agreeing to this in those paragraphs. But yeah, it's not, you know, we got to close sometime and we got to waive our due diligence at some point, and we're just choosing to do it now. So,
I'm happy to add a couple of things about it. I think a lot of it is just reminding them hey, remember when we set up this due diligence? It's because we didn't know exactly how much time we're going to need to resolve these issues. We've now had that time. We've taken that time to resolve it. The only reason why we would check this is say there's it was already mentioned, a pending inspection that barring the results of that particular inspection that we're still waiting for the results on, those would be the things that both parties are already aware of. Every other situation where they've gone through and resolved the issues, it's a simple reminder. Look, since we come to this resolution, this conclusion, buyer, you want to move forward, right? Yep, we do. Okay, is there any reason why you would not want to move forward? Nope. Okay, great. The seller's going to want to know the same thing, that they're now ready to move on to the next stage. So this is just more of a precaution why they have that there. And since we don't have any unresolved issue, there shouldn't be any challenge or reason not to just move forward.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it.
Kimberly, you have a comment. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks. I'm educating. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers. And so the whole process as we go through and we're looking at homes, we're talking about these things. And the moment we enter the contract, I like go over when I explain the contract to them, I just tell them, I'm getting you 14 days due diligence. That's pretty standard. And I explain to them, if we have anything, we want to order your inspection fairly early in case you need a meth test or a mold test that take normally five or more days to come back. And we want to have all that information. If they need an electrician to go in, we want all that information so that we can do everything in one go, and you'll feel good about buying the house and you go ahead and you feel comfortable resolving it. So I just kind of set the expectation up front that there's a certain period of time that we don't want to push it all the way to the very end. And then when necessary, extend. So a lot along the lines of what Rob was saying. It's worked really well.
All right.
And I use that form a lot.
I'm gonna give you guys a sneak preview of this then, because look, there's 33 of us on here, so you can tell everyone, hey, I saw the new buyer guide today. All right. So at the bottom of every page, if you can see that, there is a kind of a timeline of where we are in the process. Okay. And one of the segments is on writing the offer, and the other segment is on resolution of information that we've discovered. And so Kim is right. I mean, having these discussions ahead of time is so much better than educating them in the moment, because it almost seems a little bit like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me? And this all points back to having a better buyer presentation, getting out ahead of the issues, telling them what's coming, not what's upon them, right? It's very uncomfortable when it's upon them already. People want to know what's coming, not what's happened. So yeah, this is the section, structuring resolution, right? By the way, you guys, this is 35 pages of making your case for the value you provide as a buyer's agent. And yeah, I mean, if we're better off at educating them ahead of time, wow, right? That's how you win friends in this business. That's how you become a trusted advisor. That's how you get referrals. That's how your business builds upon itself organically, is because you were so protective and so in front of every issue. So really, really good stuff. And you're right, Kim, and I'm glad you do that. And now we're about to give you more resources to make that presentation better and more organized.
Rachel says, we have a buyer guide ? Yes, Rachel, we do. It's not ready for prime time, but you did get a sneak preview. I'm sure you're going to tell all your friends. because that's what you do in this situation. So yeah, coming
This is-
soon to a theater near you.
And guess what, Rach? It's going to have a beautiful Moab picture, the said sand rock, the red landscape on the front for you. It's going to have information specifically. There's a page here where we're talking about searching that is going to be your town. That's going to be Real Scout, your town, your information. It's going to be Moab buyer guide. It's going to be Kanab. It's going to be St. George. It's going to be Cache Valley. It's all going to be customized. And hey, Kev Larson, are you on still? Did I lose Kev? Lost Kev. But I also have the Park City developments. Brad, how does that look, huh? Eh? Nice, right?
Very nice.
Yep. You guys are going to love it. I mean, nothing's ever perfect. I mean, you could always pick apart every presentation, but trying to give you guys enough to make it work. And sorry, that Kim just spawned the thought of getting out ahead of these issues and educating people in the beginning. And it's so, so, so important that we are truthful about the complexities of this business. We can no longer tell people it's no problem, I'll handle that. It's not fair and it's not honest. It's not that it's no problem. It is a problem. It's a serious problem. And we've got to be more honest and truthful about it. And when we do, we will naturally build value and you'll be a magnet for clients.
Sandy says, Will, I love how excited you are. I am excited for the buyer guys too. Smiley face star eyes emoji. Rachel says, very exciting. 2 thumbs up. Sandy says, Intermountain Properties 2?
Yeah.
Question mark?
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. And yes, Intermountain Properties also. Yes, also. Yeah, be patient on that one, but it'll be there. You know, it's been a huge undertaking, you guys, and we're in the middle of it right now. Cheryl Bosch deserves a massive thank you for helping tackle this thing. And it's been a lot of work putting these pages and the images together and the structure. I mean, we even used AI on some stuff, and Mark O'Brien's gone through wording on this, and it's been a team effort, and it still needs collaboration. You know, like there still needs to be, we're not to the point where I can hand it to a few agents and say, what does it not have that needs to have, or what's in it that needs to be taken out? We're not quite there yet, but I'm still looking for a lot more eyes on this. So by the time we get to the seminars, we've got something that you guys can hold in your hand and you can use. I'm hoping we're to that point. More important than getting it right than to hit the deadline. But I think right now it looks positive that we'll be ready for the seminars.
All right.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Paragraph 3. Repairs to be made by seller. Seller and buyer agree that seller will be responsible for the completion of the repairs by the settlement deadline. And unless otherwise agreed to in writing, seller shall, through contractors, complete the repairs to comply with applicable law, including governmental permit, inspection, and approval requirements. All repairs shall be performed in a workmanlike manner with materials of quality and appearance comparable to existing materials. And then you would insert your agreed upon repairs.
So I can't help. It always makes me cringe. You know, many of you having sellers do repairs is kind of the last option. And clearly that's why it's number 3 and not number 1. I have heard some arguments from buyers on the other side that go, I don't want to bother with the contractors. I don't want to try to get them scheduled. I don't want to work on it. And yeah, we tell the buyers, sellers have, that's why the language is there. You know, through contractors, like I don't want to do it yourself project. Okay. Applicable laws, because I don't want you cutting corners. I want you to get a permit if it's needed. If there's inspections, I want you to, like, I want to be in workman and quality manner. The reason that's on there is because sellers are notorious for cutting corners. They're moving out. It's a chapter that they're moving on from. It's behind them, and they don't want to be bothered with it either. And they're going to do the minimum they can possibly do. So we'd rather, right? Wouldn't we rather have a price reduction and then have the buyer do the repairs Sure, we would. And then what's the obstacle there? Well, the buyer says, I don't have the cash to do it. So if I drop if there's a $10,000 repair, $5,000 repair, and we come off $5,000 in the price, that doesn't mean I have $5,000 in my hand that I get to go hire the contractor. Understand that. I understand that, but that is what we prefer because it's better to have you do the work. This is why, you know, this business is complicated, right?
Yes.
Not a lot. So like, I'm going to throw a wrench in this, and you guys could probably already know the wrench.
Yep.
Does the lender need to know about these repairs? This is what I always get asked. Does the lender need to know?
If it's
Depends
in
on
the
if you want to
contract,
commit
yes.
non-prob. I mean, it's, you know, it's just a decision you have to make.
Rob, what did you say?
I would say if it's in the contract, yes. So the one thing about the negotiation process, and I've even seen it several times since being over here, is there's two ways to negotiate. The lender, there's no, until you have an agreed upon item, the lender isn't part of that negotiation. So if there's something that you're asking to have the seller repair, there's no problem having a conversation or even an email conversation going back and forth. But once you have an agreement, so what I mean by that, say like there's 10 things that the buyer wants to be repaired. If you put those in the addendum, and then after like 3 or 4 counters, the seller agrees to repair, both buyer and seller come to agreement of 3 items that they're going to fix. Well, now the problem is the lender is aware of all the other 7 that are not going to be repaired. And that has not been agreed upon to do. So therefore, but it's part of the contract. And so the lender, yes, has to be aware of it. Versus if you had a conversation and started with the 10 items, and once you got down to the 3 or 4 that buyer and seller agree upon, at that point, that then needs to be part of the contract. And that's the part that where this contract, it has the precise language already taken for us versus us trying to create it ourselves. It says prior to settlement. Many times I've had agents write prior to closing, the work needs to be done. Well, think about it. Closing occurs after all parties have signed, the funding potentially could happen, or it happens, and then recording happens. That's when closing happens. But when is the seller in default? Prior to closing. So everyone signed, they're technically not in default if the repairs aren't done. Whereas this contract says prior to settlement, so the buyer wouldn't have to go sign anything unless those repairs are done. So even having the correct language being used, that the repairs are finished prior to settlement, is critical.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a spin on this, Rob. I think that's I think that's a good catch. I would have liked to have had a box here that would have had a choice. So I think in most cases there's a better deadline. So we've got a box for settlement is what I would like, and I'd like another box that says walkthrough. Because walkthrough's happening prior to settlement. I go to walkthrough and I get there, the repairs aren't done. And even though walkthrough says any repairs. Right? This is kind of got a conflict here. So in the resolution, of course, is the last addendum. And it's going to take control. But yeah, when it says walkthrough as repaired or collectively as agreed, we say that in section 11 in walkthrough that the repairs will be done. But then over here, we're saying it's done by settlement. And now we've got a conflict and the last addendum controls. So it's now by settlement. And I think that the forms committee needs to change that. I think that needs to have either settlement or walkthrough. And ideally, as a buyer's agent, I want to see the repairs done when we go walkthrough. So that would mean a modification. That would mean we'd need to say in regards to completion deadline, seller agrees to have the following repairs completed no later than walkthrough. And then we would want walkthrough defined as a date. So, Thursday, January, whatever, February 3rd. something to think about, because if you go to do your walkthrough and you're expecting to see the repairs done, you're not going to find them because they're not due until settlement. And to Rob's point, they're not in default till after that. So something to consider. All the nuances are fun.
Fun. All right, paragraph 3.1, buyer's remedies for unfinished repairs. If, as of the settlement deadline, the repairs have not been completed, then buyer may enter into an escrow agreement with the seller, approved by the lender, to finish the repairs after closing. In the event seller and buyer cannot agree on the escrow, or it is not approved by the lender, then buyer may alternatively elect one of the following remedies in 381A and 31B below. If 31A or 31B is not checked, then the escrow is the sole remedy for incomplete or unfinished repairs. So your option is A, the buyer may cancel the REPC, and in addition to the return of the earnest money deposit or deposits, if applicable, except from seller, as liquidated damages, a sum equal to the earnest money deposit or deposits, if applicable, seller agrees to pay the liquidated damages to buyer upon demand. Or you may elect item B, buyer may complete the purchase of the property and then pursue any other remedies available at law after closing. Terms of this section 3 inclusive shall survive closing. So, none of those really feel all that great. I mean,
I know. Our demeanor kind of goes, oh yeah, this isn't working.
Yeah, it's, I mean, if a seller sees that, that's, it doesn't feel good, but whatever. Whatevs.
Mike, do you have to check one of these boxes? You have
no.
to check A or B?
No, if you do not check A or B, then escrow is the sole remedy for incomplete or unfinished repairs.
Thank you.
Which will probably be a problem with your lender if you have one.
Depending on the kinds of repairs, yes.
Yeah.
And it's a red flag for a listing agent if you start getting buyers who say, I'm going to cancel if, $2,000 worth of repairs are not done on a $2 million house. That's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of context with these boxes. I mean, it's, it's hard to evaluate each of these options in a vacuum. But carefully consider them when you're in your given situation. All right.
I mean, this is, Lance does a class on the power of earnest money. Really good. Couple of thoughts about earnest money. We have in that form, they're matching the earnest money. Well, if the earnest money is only $5,000, it's kind of an easy out, right? But if I've increased my earnest money to something more substantial, 50 grand, 100 grand, depending on sales prices, look at my options now. The seller really better get serious about this, or they're going to have to match that, especially if I marked A in that box. And that would be a red flag for a listing agent. But, just so you know, that's, earnest money. And there's times too where buyers have to decide, do you like the earnest money more than the house? And you just come up to that. You're going to have to make a decision. You either like the deposit, or you want to protect that, and you want to cancel, protect the deposit, or you love the home, all things being considered. So, I think this is fun for me. I think we should celebrate the complexity. We just have to. If it's easy and simple, then there's no value in you. And just go at it yourself. Like, just go contact the listing agent and buy a home from the listing agent.
Ew.
Yeah, right.
Gross.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to turn out as you think.
All right, moving on. Anybody have any questions before we move on that particular addendum or comments or
Hey, Mike,
stories?
I'll add one thing in regards of if the boxes are not checked, yes, the sole remedy is the escrow, but just be mindful of the fact, as you already said, if the lender A doesn't permit any money to be escrowed, then if you don't check one of those boxes, you're hurting yourself. And if it's a cash transaction, if no money ends up being escrowed, again, if you don't check one of those boxes, the default, you've defaulted yourself into a corner because you don't have anything to fall back on, even though escrow is your sole remedy.
All righty, very good. Will isn't there, but we can continue. So one of the things I mentioned in that video that we wanted to talk about was authority of signers. And I feel like this is something we should touch on frequently and make sure everybody had. Oh, by the way, I'm going to put in the chat this document. Give me just a second here. I'm going to put in the chat the authority of signers document to have with you. It's a pretty handy little guide. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it is because it's always relevant and people always have questions. But two, we had in my office, somebody somewhere commit massive fraud against one of our buyers. So we did everything right. Berkey's did everything right in this instance. But the listing agent from another company had listed a piece of property, did not really verify who the owner was or that they were actually talking to the owner. And this person successfully walked away with $250,000 and sold a piece of property that wasn't theirs. And our buyer owned this property for multiple months, and it's still in the buyer's name at the county before anyone discovered it. And it was discovered when the actual owner showed up to pay their property taxes, and the county assessor, whoever, was like, "Hey, you're good. You've paid for this year." And that was the first clue. So anyway, yeah, that's where, and by the way, everybody's like, what happened? Well, one, that's where the title company's insurance policy comes into play. So I'm hoping in the next week at the latest, our buyer will be reimbursed. It was a cash transaction. Our buyer will be fully reimbursed. And as far as like, are these people going to be caught? I'm not going to put any money on that. If I could put some money on that, it would be that they're going to get away with it and not suffer any consequences. So that sort of brings us to authority of signers. I mean, it's sort of connected, but it also brings us, I know that this has been going around where randoms are calling real estate agents saying, or contacting them saying, "Hey, I want to list my property." And you don't know who these people are. And it's usually vacant land. It's usually unencumbered land. Because that's the only stuff they can actually sell, something that's unencumbered. And the vast majority of the time, I think their story is a little too sketchy and doesn't check out. But it does beg the question, if you've never seen these people IRL, that's in real life, in case some of y'all didn't know. If you've never seen these people IRL, how do you actually know that they own this property? And by the way, you're wondering, like, how did they sign the documents? Well, they signed the documents by requesting a mobile notary because, hey, we're not in state, we're in Florida, and we are going to do, a mobile closing. And they go, "Oh, by the way, can we pick our own notary as well?" And the title company agreed to that, and they got back everything signed, notarized, and completed the transaction. Now, the listing agents, as far as we know, did not ever receive ID or any form of ID from these people. So it does beg the question, Will, how do we actually know?
How do I sleep at night? I don't know. It's a scary time we live in right now, and the scammers and frauds are getting better at what they do. We had an agent down here in the Salt Lake office who listed a property, vacant land. The owner contacted him, and come to find out, second time this happened. Second time, his lot was identified as one that could have that could be up for sale, and it was being sold by someone who's not the owner. and very much the same storyline that Mike just said. And if you want to know more of the story there, our agent actually said, "Hey, I've got an idea." I remember the owner calling the office really frustrated. And Rob, this is when you weren't around, so I had to take the call. There was no branch manager to take the call. And he was just ranting and raving. He goes, "Don't you guys do any research? How did you not know?" I was like, "Look," I said, "I'm just hearing about this for the very first time." But our agent contacted me and said, "I've got an idea." Because he talked to the real owner and he said, "What if we put a sign on your property that said this sign is not for sale, and we'll pay for it? And I'll go install it." Because I don't know how your address has come up on, likely to be a potential lot that, can be sold remotely and is subject to scam and fraud. But somehow it happened. We did catch it before we were under contract. So thank goodness. Our agent contacted the FBI and turned it over to them and said, "Well, we will inject ourselves." So if FBI started acting like the title company to see if they could catch these guys. The FBI told our agent that they're likely offshore, but we're going to see what we can do. And so they started injecting themselves as the title company. I was like, wow, talk about using their own techniques against them. So, but yeah, I think how do we avoid this? I mean, we've got to do a better job at vetting the owner and asking for verification and using our title company partners to work in conjunction with them, and don't take shortcuts. We've got to make sure we verify that the person we're talking to is the owner, and we're just, have to just do that.
I think
Well,
one of
can
our
I
habits-
chime in on this maybe a little bit?
please
Yeah,
do.
please, Joe.
You're working in a profession at a time in our societal evolution where this is not going to be irregular at all. Like you will have more and more of these all the time. So do you remember when you first got your first email account and you're like, I'm so excited, and then you knew somebody else with an email account, you got your very first email, and now you look at your inbox with your 72,000 unread messages and you go, people stop sending me email, right? Because email just exploded with spam, right? It's going to be a similar situation in which the ability to identify an owner and an address and the ability to take that into a transaction, you will probably get more solicitations. This year, 2024, you'll get more than you got last year, and 2025, you'll get more ever. They will become more advanced because there's AI and there are other things that these folks offshore that are using to sound more natural, like they are from Florida, Mike, as opposed to somewhere in Guyana or one of the other centers for a lot of this kind of stuff. And one of the things that is so frustrating is when you get asked to slow down a transaction to do some verification things, right? You don't want to get in the way of the business and the transaction moving forward. I think what Will was saying earlier on in this call, and kind of what we all need to sort of absorb, is that your ability to ask for one-on-one conversation, real-time phone calls, we have to meet somewhere, we can't do that. Can we FaceTime? Can we do a Google Meet? Can we do something? The more you press on that at the beginning, the more they will run away, because they do not want to show their faces. They do not want to show anything but PDFs or JPEGs of their ID, or as in this case, he talked about having their own notary and having all that just come back. So from an agent perspective, you're like, this is awesome. We're just doing email and things are happening, the transactions moving forward. But understand that the PC MLS just put out an alert this morning that there is somebody who's got a full fake ID for Utah trying to sell a lot multiple times, same exact same thing. Kim, yes, I just saw it. When you ask for a Zoom, you ask for a FaceTime, you ask for whatever, they go away. And the reason being is, just like my brother, who was a police chief, used to say all the time, an open door in a car is way easier for a thief than breaking a window and grabbing something. And so most of these crimes are crimes of opportunity. So the less resistance you put up front in terms of entering a contract or a transaction, the more that they will run with it. So it might feel to you like this is invasive, or I'm kind of pushing to get an ID or a FaceTime call or something, right?
but understand that it is in your best interest and the best interest of your clients to go ahead and offer that, you know, like a bouncer at the front of a club or a restaurant. You're just checking ID. You're just trying to make sure, right? Or you're going, or one of the favorite things in the world that can happen is if you're an older gentleman like yourself and you're sitting there and someone says, "Can I see your ID, sir?" I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay, great. Yeah." Just use it as a complimentary, whatever personality you want, but you want to get that face to face because this is going to become much more common.
Thank you, Joe. Couple of comments in the chat. Rachel says, have title company send a letter to the owner of record to confirm the listing. Very good idea. That's going to go to the mailing address attached to the property. Kim says, I asked for a Zoom meeting and then they hung up. There you go. And Brad says, a real property owner will appreciate some vetting as well. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think we need to take the position that, I mean, think about it. In my life, how many times have I asked somebody for the ID when I listed the property? I can probably count on 0 fingers how many times I've asked for that. And so, but that's not correct anymore, I don't think. I mean, you know, if you're walking into someone's home and, you know, they're escorting you around, I don't think we need to ask for IDs in that scenario. But in many other scenarios, I think we do. I think we need to verify IDs. And by the way, a good fake ID is very affordable. So, you know, we can't just stop there. We need to include our title companies to verify this information. So there you go. Rob says,
and not even going to the ID side, just getting a face-to-face, even if it's a digital face-to-face, like what Kim was saying in the chat. The minute you push a little bit, right, the criminals will go away, right? Because what they're looking for is an unimpeded, all digital, no face-to-face, no questions asked transaction. So if that's happening to you, all your spidey senses should be flying off. If they don't want to talk live or any of those things.
There was another fact in that case we had at the Salt Lake office. There was a Les Pendens that was found on the title report when we pulled it, when we went to go take the listing. The fraud seller had the Les Pendens removed before we had it listed officially. Like, the fraud seller somehow contacted the lien holder and had it removed because our agent was like, Will, I trusted them because they were trying to clean the title up. And they worked with our title company all by email to have the Les Pendens removed.
Yeah, I think if you think about the effort and knowledge and sophistication it takes to do that, know that these people are not fools. Like this isn't your local druggie trying to get tomorrow's fix. Like these people are really thinking through this process. Couple of comments. Rob, these guys are also wanting to close as fast as possible. So that is red flag. Great comment. Trish says I have lots of fraud attempts, all trying to use WhatsApp. Yeah, that's a really good. WhatsApp is not very popular in America, and it's very popular everywhere else. So that is a really good flag. Red flag. Sandy says I have also had a few messages coming in about wanting to communicate through WhatsApp and then being disappointed or bluntly rude about how they wouldn't do business with me if I didn't communicate in that form. Yeah, that's super weird. That's also like creepy vibes too, not just like fraud vibes, but creepy vibes too on that one. Joe says, Sandy, absolutely common to try and move to an international messaging platform like WhatsApp or Signal or many others. And when they know they've lost the opportunity, they will get mean as their last attempt. I mean, at least they could be a little nicer about it. I mean, just move on, you know? Why do you gotta be mean?
But the psychology script, Mike, doesn't work that way. Like they've been doing this for decades plus over the phone, right? And everyone on this call at one point in time got an email from a prince that has been excluded from their home country and just needs $4,000 to get their 25 million out of an international bank, right? That's how it started. But understand that the script here on the psychology, they know that humans in particular, we in the West, we don't want to upset people. So when you're not doing what they want, they're trained. It's literally, they're reading it on a script, they're retyping it. It's to accelerate the emotion. It's to start blame. It's to start doing whatever because they're trying to get you to go, wait, I didn't mean to make you mad. And then they're trying to reinsert themselves back in the transaction. So yeah, get ready. That's a badge of pride, Sandy. It's a badge of pride to have somebody in a foreign country say mean things about you on WhatsApp.
All right, it's 1:53. Anybody have any further comments on this? By the way, we can review who can sign that document I put in the chat. Also gives you some direction on how to have these people sign, maybe even like a power of attorney in .loop. For instance, John Doe, attorney in fact for Jane Doe, stuff like that, so you can know how to properly formulate these signatures. So, you know, keep that guide handy. It's very helpful. And yes, work with your title company to vet these people. And although I'm saying that, and the instance I told you about, it actually didn't work because they fooled the title company too. But the vast majority of the time, if we dig deep enough, they will get caught. And oh, Sandy did ask, did the buyer blame us in any way? No. It was a standard run-of-the-mill transaction. As Joe says, there was a lot of communication over the phone with the listing agents by the fraudster. And everything just went according to plan. You know, the buyer did their due diligence with the city. They went in, they figured out if they could build. They did everything according to plan, and they just successfully fooled everyone into, they convinced everyone that they were the actual buyer. So the one thing I don't know is if they just picked a random come on, brain, you know, the people who verify your signature. We said the word like 9 times in this meeting.
Notary.
Thank you, notary. I don't know if they picked a random notary or if they had a notary with them, or if they walked somewhere, like they had to present a fake ID to a notary. Of course, a notary is just going to verify that, you know, they're not going to check fake IDs, but it would also require these people walking in and showing their faces to somebody. So that part I'm a little curious.
And most of the notaries that do these transactions they have a cut of the result. So understand that there are people that are actual notaries that's, you know, they're licensed and all that stuff's great, but then they get the back phone rings and it's, hey, I'm going to send you one. And then they get a kickback. So don't count on the notary to help on that particular part.
Yeah, good point. I mean, the notary is just going to go, okay, you look like Bob, let's go. And that's all they're going to do. So, yeah, I kind of want it. They're not going to get caught. They're not going to get caught. All right. Good note to end on. 1:56. We got 4 minutes left. Does anybody have any random comments, issues, anything they would like to address before we go off the airwaves? Yeah, take it away, Kimmy. Oh, no. Okay, I thought you.
Oh, you don't? Oh,
I thought you
okay.
did something there.
You want to sign us off, Mike, or you want me to, or?
Oh, take it away, Will. You're the signer offer, not me.
I'm the signer
this.
offer. Hey, I've got you want a dad joke real quick?
Very
okay,
good.
All right, this is a winter dad joke. Here we go. Why was the snowman looking through a bag of carrots? Why was snowman looking through a bag of carrots? He was picking his nose. He was picking his nose. Now, if you say that to a group of adults, you'll get, oh, okay, that's kind of funny. Now go say that to like an elementary school child. They will lose their minds. They'll say, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. They're picking their nose. No way. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. So anyway, hey, love you guys. Thanks for joining us on Huddle. It's good to see you. I look forward to seeing us all together next week. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. It's just a great time of year to be optimistic and inspired. 2024 will be fantastic, and we're very blessed to have each other as friends in this environment, inspire and learn from each other. And I hope you know that there's nothing you can't learn, and there's nothing you can't do. And now we need to take all this wisdom and all this value and go out there and find someone to help, because they need you and they'll be lucky to have you. So have a great rest of your day. Love you all.